YouTube, and hello the world of Facebook. So we have a special guest today, Jason, and you've seen him before. We're going to be talking about mass marketing and mass production of toys. And first of all, I must say, happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy, happy, happy. I can't see me.
There you go.
Hell, here I am. Okay, so we're going to be walking back and forth. So as people come on, oh look, who's this? This is, well, hello, Melinda. Excuse me if I get too close to the things, to the screens, but I don't have an additional phone to do it. As you all know, today is Valentine's Day, and again, happy Valentine's Day. Jasmine was lucky enough for her boyfriend to take her away for the week. And so therefore that's why we have Jason, which I'm more than happy of. And you know, he can jump in anytime because he works here. So but his knowledge on toys when it comes to this type of stuff is great. He's a huge comic book fan and Marvel, stuff like that. So his knowledge when it comes to mass marketing and merchandise is great. So I'm happy we're doing this with you. Welcome. Thank you. And I hope that Jasmine's having a great time in Chicago. That's where they ended up taking her.
Sounds like it was a pretty good trip, I think.
Yep. So if you're not on watching, not to worry. Watch it later, Jasmine. Hopefully you're at some fantastic dinner. But and who else do I have here? Hi, Bill. How are you? Why is not showing me my here we go. Steve's on, Bill's on. My mom should be jumping on soon. So I may have to respond to your guys' comments after because I don't have the ability to see it right now. So I can see a little bit. Well, hello, Bill. So we're gonna talk about mass marketing and merchandising based on media.
Yeah.
For the most part.
tie-in or how the actual industry kind of came up and started out.
Yes. Oh, I got to remember that we're two different ways here. So if I stand here, I can see you back there. I'm going to go back there in a minute, but so I'm going to go off the screen because I'm going to put something on, something cool on, and Jason's going to take over for a minute.
All right. So we're basically talking this week a little bit about merchandising, mass market production of stuff based on media. So films, TV shows, cartoons, the rest of it. We've got a pretty good smattering of stuff, just as examples that we're going to try and pull up here. Things like the Smurfs, obviously, something you would be familiar with. Advertising campaigns such as the California Raisins. Also had a lot of tie-ins. Sesame Street, which began as a television show.
Can I make
and
my
nonprofit?
appearance real quick?
And we have a special appearance from some of the
Okay, so
new artwork.
well, hello, hello. Look, I've got the crown and the mask on. So I made these.
Yeah.
I did. 3 days. I just had to show you Valentine's Day big hearts.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day. These are going to be available in the store.
Yep.
This one is, but we make them to your specific requirements and requests. So anyways, I just had to show you, so we'll get back in a minute.
He's so proud he's been working on
I
it.
have that.
Yeah, they're great. So television tie-ins, things like obviously the Mork and Mindy. We were doing the doll from back in the day. Laverne and Shirley. We sadly lost Cindy Williams this year.
I
There
know.
was a board game that was put out after the popularity of the show.
That was so sad.
Yes. It's been a bad year for losing some
It's
of the
been a
players.
bad year for Laverne and Shirley.
Yes.
So
and even stuff as esoteric as rides at amusement parks. You'll
Can you
find
believe that?
merchandise and souvenirs that are based
Oh,
on
yes, me. Hello.
all
So-
that type of thing.
Don't forget you have that one.
Yes.
So this is new to
Both.
Jason having the two
Yes.
screens
We've done before.
sliding back and forth. So so he's showing you what we have here based on movies and TVs and stuff like that. So what's your favorite? Do you think when it comes to like?
Well, I mean, as a
that?
diehard like '80s guy and a comic book guy and a cartoon guy, for me it was always the action figures and the toys that tied into cartoons or came from the movies.
Like these type?
Yes, and so
Okay.
while the quality kind of suffers sometimes depending on the interpretation of the actual piece itself, stuff like the Superman dolls any of the Batman action figures, the Batman merchandise that kind of came along with it. You know, Wonder Woman, exactly right.
Mhm.
That type of stuff is this kind of thing that still gives me a thrill to this day. And just discovering like where some of the stuff came from, differing values based on where it was at. And the value is something that we were discovering
Yeah.
as we were talking about
There was actually.
mass
You're
market
right.
production.
I have no
stuff
idea where I put my paperwork.
over here.
Okay, so yeah, rides. Can you believe that? So, talking about mass production, let's talk about things that people. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about things that people think. The misconception of mass merchandising, or
Yes.
the misconception of merchandising. I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
Okay, I Love Lucy. What's his name up there? Laurel and Hardy. Anything done prior to 1960.
Yes.
So anything done prior to 1960. So, for instance, if you have a I Love Lucille Ball cookie jar,
Right.
or like the board game,
Yeah.
I can show you.
Yep.
Oh, it's over here. So, or like the board game here, like so, the I Love Lucy Monopoly set, right? So this type of stuff is not to date,
Right.
because when it comes to making merchandise for movies and TV and anything else, the mass marketing started around the mid 80s.
Right.
It actually started in the late 70s, but became a gripping hold in the late 80s
Yeah.
or mid 80s. So if you see like an I Love Lucy cookie jar board game, it was made in the late 80s, early 90s. Very rarely, am I correct in saying this? Very rarely did they make any type of movie memorabilia that you could buy at the store.
Right. Well, or as a tie-in or something that was going to be released simultaneously. Like there was
Right.
a merchandising campaign built into the idea of the theater release.
Right. So that happened later.
Right. Right.
And I think that it got and I would think that it got its what's the word I'm looking for? Its huge
Momentum.
boost
Yeah.
during Star Wars.
Yes. Star Wars, I think, is one of the ones that most folks will consider probably to be one of the big success stories of merchandising, toys, the timelines, everything else. In addition to the film's popularity as
Mhm.
well, there's a genius in terms of the marketing of the toys, as well as how beloved they were, as well as how collectible they are based on that.
Right. So that's exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about, so I printed off this thing, 7 moments that changed movie merchandising. Okay. So and there are a couple of them I didn't know of, and I love it because the number 1 on here, or number 7 on here, is Tom Hanks was born.
Yes.
So they actually
Apparently.
put, so under the movie things, set the top 7 things that changed the way we look at merchandising.
Right.
And Tom Hanks is number 7.
Yes. Yes.
So when I say that, Tom Hanks is probably the landmark product placement movies. He's done more landmark product placement movies than anybody else. So if you think back to Toy
Story. Or no, Big.
Big
Yeah.
to Big.
The FAO Schwartz.
FAO Schwartz.
commercial. Yeah.
And then of course, you know, the Zelda or Zolden, the machine.
Yep.
What else was he in? Let's see. That Toy Story, of course.
Yes.
That
All the toys
spawned
along with it.
Castaway because of that. And I'm gonna tell you, Castaway had the largest, and it was funny, had the largest sales of volleyballs.
Yeah.
because
you're
of
tying it
Castaway.
into- Right.
So I thought it was hilarious. Yeah, look, FAO Schwartz, it says
Yep.
right there.
Uh-huh.
And then FedEx
Yes.
was also a big one with him.
Yep.
The Wilson volleyball, the FedEx, and stuff like that. Actually, he is so prolific with movie merchandising and the movies he's been in that they said that he could do a movie of all he did was sit for 110 minutes and eat rice checks,
Yeah.
and rice checks would sell out.
Yeah. Well, which also begs the question of if you've got a successful vehicle in a movie, then do
Mhm.
the product and manufacturers flock to someone who they know is going to sell tickets,
Yeah.
or who they know is going to be. So it
I
doesn't
mean-
become an issue as far as we want to get our product in that movie because we know it's going to get mass exposure.
Right, it was crazy when
Yeah.
that his name was
Yeah.
on there.
Yeah.
But the number 1, which I thought was interesting, is George Lucas's
Yes.
fleecing of the 20th Century Fox. So explain that. What does that mean?
Well, quite simply, I'm not an expert, but as far as I understand, the idea was that 20th Century Fox, when they were producing Star Wars, didn't see a lot of momentum in the film. Didn't think it was going to get a lot of bite, or it was going to basically appeal to a very select audience.
Right.
So the idea being is that it may have been a flash in the pan, sell some tickets, and then we'll never hear from it again. So in terms of setting up the merchandising rights and everything else, they let Lucasfilm retain all of the merchandising rights and the marketing rights to Star Wars, which ended up being a boon because, again, as we were talking about, with toys and
It actually
memorabilia
wasn't
and
just Star
souvenirs.
Wars, though. He did it with 20th Century Fox, so it was also E.T.
Yes, yes,
Speaking of E.T.,
yes.
so, and a lot of you know this, E.T., the movie E.T. has one of the biggest blunders a company could do, and that is when E.T. in there. So if we remember correctly, the candy that that they put down for E.T. was Reese's Pieces, right?
Everybody knows it's Reese's Pieces.
Right.
Everybody knows Reese's Pieces now because of E.T.
Because of
as far as the
E.T.
film.
So one of the things I was looking at was Reese's Pieces was trying to figure out a way to push.
How are they going to become
Yeah.
a name in the candy game?
And so E.T. did that for them. And they have M&M's, Mars Company, to thank for that because M&M's turned them down, and so did Skittles.
Yes.
So M&M's and Skittles turned them down for that role, and Reese's Pieces says, we'll do it.
Yep.
And now look at it. I mean, come on.
You
That's
can't
the
think of
biggest
E.T.
mistake. So I wonder, M&M, Mars Company, are you sitting there just like kicking yourself? I hope so, because you should be. Hi, Mom. How are you?
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi, James. So, oh no, I'm losing everybody. Okay, here we go.
Got it.
So, that's what I get for not having another vehicle, right? Okay, so let's talk about, and we're going to talk about this because the 1970s saw a huge boom in, like the late 70s, saw a huge boom in how lucrative it is to actually put out merchandise
Yep.
based on the TV shows and the cartoons from that time period.
Yep.
Because we had no internet.
Yes.
So if you enjoyed the show, you'd enjoy playing the board game, right? And when you look at it, like the Mork and Mindy, the Laverne and Shirley, the Charlie's Angels, all 70s programs, early 80s programs.
Yes.
So who can tell me what Laverne and Shirley was a spin-off of? So, come on, you guys. Laverne and Shirley, what was a spin-off of? And then you can tell me what Mork and Mindy was a spin-off of. Who can tell me? Come on.
Yes.
Mork and Mindy and Laverne and Shirley are spin-offs of what show? Come on. It snowed there today. It snowed in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
That's hilarious.
That is.
So, Happy Days.
Drama.
Yes,
Yes.
both of them were spin-offs from Happy Days. Mork landed his egg in the same town.
Yep.
Isn't that hilarious?
Yes, I remember the
Is that-
crossover, the finger and the thumb.
Yep. So the Mork doll, right?
Yeah.
Look at that. The Mork doll. So Mork and Mindy. I wonder how many people don't even know. I know the egg's actually in there. So the Mork doll, Mork and Mindy doll. So these were big. These came out. This one is 1979.
Yes.
So 1979, the late 70s, we saw a huge influx of here, go ahead and put that there. Thanks. A huge influx of movie and TV memorabilia or toys. So who remembers Midway and Earthquake, the movie Earthquake? Now,
The big disaster.
I don't know, maybe this is a bad thing to talk about after. But anyways, so Earthquake from a 1970s movie. Oh, you're right. Mork landed in Colorado. He landed at Arnold's in Happy Days.
Right. Yeah.
So it's still the town.
Yeah.
But he did land in Colorado, actually,
Yeah.
because the film was in Colorado.
Yeah.
But anyway, so these are based off 70s films. These are puzzles. I put them together so I know they're all here.
Yeah.
But these were huge. I mean, I remember watching these, don't you?
Yeah.
And then Towering Inferno.
Yep.
And all of those.
Yeah.
Disaster movies were big in the 70s, and they had to make puzzles and all sorts of stuff for it.
Yeah.
And they've already remade this movie. So, that's why we have these here, Laverne and Shirley, and a nod to Shirley, of course. So, another one, yes, isn't that cool? And look, the cool thing about this is look at who's on here.
Yeah.
Look who's on here. It's Farrah Fawcett.
Yeah.
Farrah Fawcett. So this would date back to the beginning of their, or not the beginning, early. So this one was 1977. So the board game of Charlie's Angels came out in 1977 and did a stupendous amount. All because of her.
Yeah.
All because of her, because she was on every boy's bedroom.
The star power.
Hi Shirley, how are you? The star power. Okay, so we all remember the poster.
Mhm.
What are these here you have?
So a really popular thing, and I know you've seen this if you go to the bookstores, is a lot of times you're going to see tie-ins to popular movies,
Mhm.
franchises.
Mhm.
A little bit of Logan's Run there. Some Star Trek stories based on the original stuff. Novelization for King Kong. And let's not forget the Herbie series, even the Disney movies
Mhm.
got behind it. And a large part of why these came out was to capitalize on the success of a film, to act as an advertising campaign, to sort of get interest in a film.
So
and to
these
get people
came
to
out
go in.
after the film came out.
A lot of them did, yeah. You'll obviously there are going to be
Mhm.
books that were made into films, and then you slap a movie cover onto it after the fact. But to a large degree, there's a small industry of novelizations based on the original film, because people either still want that high from the film, they may be thinking about going to see the film, but maybe they want to know something about it, they want to tie into it, or it's just simply to let you know, oh gosh, that film is out there. There's books, merchandise, and everything else you can go find out.
It is common sometimes for them to have a highly successful movie and then to write a book on it.
Yes.
I've actually seen
Yes.
it when normally the book comes first.
Yes, and it's a, and like I said, it's a cottage industry. You'll see a lot of folks who their job as an author a lot of the times is to take a screenplay and adapt it into a small novel.
Perfect.
Turn it
Yeah.
into something that you can put on your bookshelf and refer back to when you want to talk about the movie.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Now one of the things that I gotta show is the and gotta say is the earliest that I have discovered
Mhm.
that they actually made a product that resembled or that was for a movie or a TV show that you could go out and buy, and that was Davy Crockett.
Right.
So Davy Crockett's Ugly Headwear.
Yes.
And so the headwear, right? That they actually made in 56. I think it said 56 in here.
So it's a raccoon skin cap that
54.
was then actually manufactured.
It was
for
actually
the
manufactured.
show to tie in.
Mhm. And so it was a tie-in, so you could go to your local department store probably, and if you couldn't find it, you could order it in.
Yes.
And so that was the very first really merchandise, movie or TV merchandise.
Right.
And they did say it was an ugly hat because it didn't sell very well.
Right.
So, which is pretty interesting.
Well, and I think consider too,
from the Indian fighter.
you're at a point in our country's history
Mhm.
where the concept of the teenager or the child with a disposable
Mhm.
income is a brand new demographic, and finding out different ways to separate those kids from the money that they're getting, or
Mhm.
ways to tie it in as far as selling what you're trying to sell to the kids and to the parents as well over the airways.
Right.
Which I find very interesting
It is.
to watch it then begin to stack up. So you go from things like the BB guns that they would tie into television shows,
Yep.
or that you would have as a
The
result of
the flyer,
the radio flyer
Yep.
wagons, that type of stuff, the
Mhm.
coonskin caps, making its way through the 1960s with stuff like the youth culture things, the
Mhm.
Beatles, memorabilia and collectibles and things like that. Then you get into the 70s, television shows. I mean, obviously movies, that type of stuff is still a big business, but kind of finding some solid footing. So Jason's exactly right. By the time you hit the 70s, you've really moved into an area where a merchandising and marketing plan is probably coming in with development of the actual media itself.
Can you guys see the merchandise that's on the table? I don't know if you
So it's
can.
down a little bit low.
I turned it down a little bit.
Okay.
So I moved you down a little bit so you can see the toys and not my ugly face. So one of the things that I thought was interesting is let's talk about Lethal Weapon for a second.
That was a good
Okay,
one.
so why do they do movie merchandise, right? Well, Lethal Weapon 2
Mhm.
is a good example of why they do movie merchandising. So the Hoagie,
Yes.
the Hoagie, which was featured in Lethal Weapon 2, they partnered with Subway. Thank you. They
Yep.
partnered with Subway to produce the Hoagie, which would have been, with kind of like, I don't know how they tied it into the movie somehow
There's something
with the
that
rapping
yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was ironic. What's funny about it is it's considered one of the best examples of movie merchandising, because what happened was the movie, leading up to the release of the movie, they were pushing the hoagie through
The restaurants.
the
themselves,
restaurants, Subways, the restaurants and stuff, and so they were selling it. By the time Lethal Weapon 2 came out, it was already paid for by that
Right,
merchandising.
enough like, come eat the
of
same
the
sandwich
sandwich.
that's going to see featured in Lethal Weapon 2. Did you love Lethal Weapon 1? Come see Lethal Weapon 2.
Yep.
Eat the sandwich first.
And they did,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
ended up paying for the movie.
Enough sales to go ahead and pay for
They took a
price
piece of every sale.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that is remarkable. Now, there are downsides to mass marketing, and we'll get to those in a minute.
Yeah.
But the number one, now, a lot of people think that, and Disney probably held the number one spot for mass merchandising when it comes, and they might have held it for decades, most likely, because those of you who know, Disney has everything.
Yeah.
So, you know, from the beautiful princesses, and we have an entire Disney section, and I'm sure you've seen them before, the Disney princesses, because Disney, Disney princesses. Disney may have held the number one spot for mass merchandising for who knows how long. However, the number one spot today is held by Transformers.
that boggles my mind, but I could understandably see that.
So they say that Transformers, the success of the movie, and probably the fact that it revitalized the 80s Transformers, and not just the Transformers, but the GoBots and the all of the other changeable toys and stuff like that. So Transformers actually holds the number one most merchandised movie series. I'm surprised Fast and the Furious, they haven't done anything before. So I thought that was interesting. What else is interesting? Tom Hanks is born, David Crockett, Snack for E.T., we did that. Okay, so another company that changed the way we looked at merchandising for toys is McDonald's.
Yes.
So McDonald's, turns out, they developed the toy for the Happy Meal.
Right.
And then everybody else jumped on board. I think McDonald's was the first one to put out the glasses.
Yes.
The glasses as well with their Happy Meals, back when they actually had good stuff with their Happy Meals.
Right.
And they revolutionized the way that people looked at toys and merchandise mass marketing to children.
Yes.
So and that's what these did to the children. They mass market to the children because it's the children who want, and screams until they get.
Right.
And then if they don't get it, they turn 30 and can afford it and come here and rebuy it.
Yeah.
So McDonald's was the first, and McDonald's not only changed the way we ate food, but they changed the way we looked at toys.
Yeah.
So, which was pretty, good for them.
Yeah.
In all fronts. Maybe not good today,
Right.
but good for them in all fronts, because if you get toys today, they're crappy.
Yeah.
So and then we'll talk about like Sesame Street, and then we'll talk about a few things that you didn't know. And what that is rides.
Yes.
Which is pretty interesting, because these days we're all about consuming up as much as we can, by showing off the parasites we are, and buying everything we can.
Yeah.
And so it's a small world.
Yep.
Here, like the music box. Here, it's a small world. Isn't that beautiful? Based off the ride at Disneyland. Based off the ride at Disneyland. So in other words, there's no movie.
Right.
There's no TV show.
Right.
There's no actual product.
Right.
It's a ride. So they based this off the ride.
Yeah.
Thank you for the hearts. So the first ones we've gotten. Come on, give us some hearts. And then so some of the top toys still fall within Disney.
Yeah.
Okay, because Disney has the themed rides.
Yeah.
So the bears, the Jamboree Bears, still hold the number one.
Right.
And
House.
what's funny is Jamboree Bears don't exist anymore.
No.
They removed them all, even though the toys still.
Yeah.
Yes, the Haunted House.
Yep.
And of course, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, I mean, 6, 7 films.
Yeah, 7 films,
based
stuff
on a
like
Disney
that.
ride.
And in this day and age, what I'm finding is you don't know who this person is. The people under the age of, I'm going to say 30, don't know a actor or actress or a or an actress or an actor, I guess there's no more to say, unless there's a movie redone about it.
Right.
So in other words, a lot of people don't know who Farrah Fawcett is. I'll talk to kids 30 and under.
Yeah.
Oh, who's Farrah Fawcett? I don't know who that is. Well,
Right.
Farrah Fawcett passed away in what, 90 something?
Yeah.
So there has not been a remake of her. There's not been an autobiography on her.
Right.
They haven't done a lot of things with her. So
Right.
a lot of kids, she's falling away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people don't.
Well, you're not repopping the posters or the photographs or
Right.
the images that made her an icon, or any of the
Mm.
movies haven't. You're right. Haven't been remade. Or
Right. And when they
adopted for a
remake,
biopic.
when they do remake, which they have done a million times, Charlie's Angels,
Yeah.
they do not depict them as what they originally were. So they're
Yeah.
nobody knows.
Yeah.
So in this society, it's become clear owning a business like this that people don't know certain people,
Mhm.
certain actors, certain people of media,
Sure.
unless there is something new done about them,
Sure.
because it's not put in your face,
Yeah.
which
Well,
makes
and that's
sense.
and that's the entertainment industry as well. It's the new
Mhm.
coming out. What's going to be new? What's going to be hot? What's
Right.
going to be driving things? What's the trend? You know what I mean? Nothing's sadder than looking at somebody. I'm guilty of this a lot. I'll see a movie a year and a half after it's come out and everybody's already talked about it, and I've read a couple articles about it. Wow, that was really great. There's
Mhm.
something nobody wants to talk to me about it because we've already
Right.
seen it, and it's old news at that
Mhm.
point. And that's going to be the case as well. A lot of vintage film you're going to find like that. A lot of actors, that type of thing.
Mhm.
I feel like I know more about actors that were in films that my parents and my
Right.
grandparents were
Yep.
seeing than I could name any people
Mhm.
in a movie coming out today. At least anybody under the age of 20 or around the age of 20 or under 30.
Right.
It's just one of those exposure and like kind of like what it is you're gravitating towards. You know?
And I wish that, because we are regurgitating
Mhm.
over and over again the movie storylines,
Yes.
TV storylines,
Right.
like how many Friday the 13th can you do? How many of these can you do? How many
Right.
of those can you do?
Right.
I think we need to take homage in what the original
Right.
was.
What was the concept, wherever you're coming from? I think.
Exactly. So when they redo a Charlie's Angels, they should. In my mind, you do the original opening and then morph it into the new
Something.
opening, and maybe revitalize the actual actresses. Now, somebody like Kelly, who is give me her name, Jacqueline
Smith.
Smith. We all know who she is because
Yes.
she has a clothing line, and she looks exactly like she did that day, which is shocking. And her daughter looks exactly like that.
Right.
So, but Kate Jackson, whatever happened to her? We have no idea.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then, of course, one of the most beautiful women who ever walked the earth.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever happened to her? So, this is the good part and the bad part of mass marketing.
Yes.
I mean, there's more bad part. Get to you in a minute.
Yeah.
But some of the things that we didn't know is like the raisins. So this is an anomaly in and of itself.
Yes.
California raisins, okay? And please don't mind the Christmas hat. California raisins. So what were these taken from? So where did these toys come from? What were these toys originally?
A California Raisin Council ad campaign trying to get people to eat more raisins.
To eat raisins, to eat food.
And yet,
So-
the genius move was to tag an old Motown song
Yep.
that still had chops and has had chops no matter
Yep.
who's been covering it, as well as to turn it into like something very, very unique and of its age. The animation, the
Yep.
style of the commercial, you'll look back and you'll know exactly what era that came from, even though you're using that good old Motown sound.
Exactly. And this right here. Okay, so even if the raisins don't last,
Mhm.
this will last forever.
Yeah.
The California raisins are one of the most collectible things there is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they really did good when they came
Yeah.
up with these.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people don't know toys like that are beyond our time, like the Davy Crockett and stuff, like Fred Flintstone, the Flintstones. That was a cartoon
Yeah.
far before any toys came out.
Right.
This cartoon debuted in the 60s, the
Yeah.
early 60s, right?
Yeah.
Before mass marketing. So this all happened decades later. So a lot of the marketing that you see here didn't come out until, like I said earlier, the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, well, or it wasn't as widespread. You know,
No.
maybe they had decided they were going to do one or two pieces or have
Mhm.
something go with it, which is, I think, again, with the vintage stuff, especially 60s and 70s items, where there wasn't a whole lot coming out. That's why a piece that was dedicated to it ends up being so much more important
Right.
or such a good find. Even for the 80s.
The Goonies, right?
Right.
Yeah. So those of you who can see, he's got the Goonies board game there.
Before we got it in,
hmm
I had no clue
There
this
was even a
product
board
even
game.
existed. I wasn't even sure. I would have.
Right.
I would not have been surprised to see a tie-in book, and
Yeah.
a T-shirt even or keyring, that type of thing.
Mhm.
But to actually have the board game being
Right.
based on the movie, it's a
Mhm.
valuable piece just simply because there aren't a whole lot of these made, and there
Right.
weren't a whole lot of games based on the Goonies.
Right. And along the lines of the Goonies is we're also talking about, board games. There's movies based on board games like Clue and stuff like that that are all based on board games for the most part.
Right.
But kind of like Jumanji,
Yes.
based on a
Yeah.
board game, but you can buy the board game.
Yeah.
And the original board game, it's worth a fortune. Just like the original Goonies board game is worth a lot because you don't know they exist.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the bad things when it comes. Well, one of the good things about mass marketing is you get the options of these no matter where you live.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So whether you live in a small town in Alaska or you live in Detroit or Los Angeles or New York, where you would in New York in these big cities, you'd get this probably back in the day.
Yeah.
If they made any like the Davy Crockett hat, you'd get back in the day.
Yeah.
But if you are in a small town in Alaska or a small town in Minnesota or something like that, you may not see those until you travel outside of those towns.
Right.
So mass marketing in the 80s gave us the ability to buy the stuff everybody else had.
Yes. It's
So
much
it
more
made
homogeneous
shopping
product line
equal
wherever
for the
you're at.
most
Right,
part. We
right.
buy it anywhere.
Yeah.
That said, it also destroyed those towns.
Yes.
Okay, when all is said and done, mass marketing, and I wrote down the top 5 reasons mass marketing actually may see the end. We may see the end of the way we mass market today. It's on the back of one of these, I promise. Here it is. So, some of the mass marketing, and those of you who know Disney know that they saturate. And when I say saturate, they make 5 billion of one thing.
Right.
Okay, so mass marketing isn't always cheap.
Right.
So as a comic book person,
Mhm.
there's Golden Age, which are the 50s.
Mhm.
There's 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
There's Silver Age, which is
The
60s,
60s,
70s.
Yep.
And then there's Bronze, which is 70s, 80s, right? So, and some of those comic books, especially the Golden Age, are worth a fortune.
Yeah.
So in today's market, if a new child, let's talk about Yuli,
Yeah.
okay, and let's pretend he doesn't know anything
Right.
about comic books, which he knows more than I do. He writes his own, and so as a 12-year-old,
Yeah.
going into a comic book store, would they be able to find something that was as collectible as if you walked into a store at 12?
No.
Why?
No.
Why is that? What
Primarily-
would they find?
Primarily because the industry has expanded so much, and in terms of relative production, it's easier to mass produce a large amount of different titles.
Mm-hmm.
That said, you're going to find those just about everywhere that you're collecting
Right.
comics, which has given rise, we could cover that
Mhm.
later, but like to the variant industry or to the one of a kind, or we only printed 1,000 of
Mhm.
this, as opposed to, and you're living in an era where we understand the value of this product from a previous age, as well as its collectability and its value.
Mhm.
So we go ahead and continue as if this is going to be the case. The reason a lot of the Golden Age stuff ends up being so collectible and so expensive is because it was seen as primarily a throwaway or disposable product.
And there weren't a lot of them.
There
made.
weren't a lot of them made, or in that same case, you had kids who were reading them basically to while away the afternoon,
Mhm.
and then they were done. You toss them, trade them,
Mhm.
whatever. It wasn't supposed to be something that was an heirloom or something that you would have kept tight. That same thing crossed over into the 40s when a lot of the GIs
Mhm.
looking for entertainment while they're overseas,
Mhm.
while they're on the move, while they're in the field.
Mhm.
Something cheap, something disposable, something you could just throw in your bag. You're not going to feel bad if it gets burnt, gets destroyed.
Right.
You have to use it for some reason. That being said, a large amount of that stuff didn't survive because people didn't understand there was going to be inherent value, because there wasn't yet.
Right.
The inherent value comes from most of them are gone. Here are several
Right.
that are extant, and here they are in differing conditions.
So if I walked in and if I went to an estate sale or a garage sale and I saw one of the white boxes, one of the white long boxes,
Mhm.
and they wanted $50 for the whole box, and let's say I bought it, would there be anything in that? Do you think if it came straight from the I mean,
It would really depend again, and again, this is the fun part of a collecting, which we all know is that,
Mhm.
that you can't tell going into the future
And
what's
if-
going to be a collectible
Right.
piece or what's going to really make an impact. Because again, someone could appear in a comic book briefly in a panel.
Mhm.
It's a throwaway piece. The issue itself is not worth all that much. 20 years later, there's a major feature film from Sony or
and all of
Warner.
a sudden that person's in
That
it.
character becomes the hottest thing going for that year, and all of a sudden people are digging down in trying to find that first appearance.
Right.
Why is it more
So,
valuable?
And then trying to find something that's already a collectible, like in a white box of comic books,
Yeah.
you're taking a chance.
Yes.
Because there's like, how many fit in a box? Maybe 100?
Yeah.
100 comic books fit in a box, and there might be one in there that's worth
Yeah.
maybe double what the rest are.
Yes.
Okay, so if you spend $50 on a box of comics, you are probably going to get your $50 worth.
Right.
But there's a high chance that you're not going to find anything
Right. That's going to get you any more value than
more value than what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
And the same with the toys that are made today,
Mhm.
because of the fact that they make 5 billion of these Monopoly I Love Lucy boards.
Mhm.
This won't be that collectible. However, I mean, it maybe in 100 years it might, if things don't survive, because you have the I Love Lucy and the Monopoly.
Or collectible in the sense of I'm a collector who collects Monopoly games
Right.
and all the different
And it's
versions
different.
of it.
That might
It's-
be your collectible.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you're not going to get tons of money for this anytime soon.
Right.
So, but it opened the door for people, for me who grew up in San Diego and you who grew up in Iowa,
Mhm.
to be able to go to the store and buy the same things.
Yes, well, and that's a part and parcel of tying that into mega corporations marketing things. And if you're going to put a film out, you've got a product placement, you're going to tie
Mhm.
that in. Well, then what's our platform? Are we selling this at which big box store?
Right.
Who's tying in to be our advertising partner
Right.
at this point? I think also to your point, with the 5 billion plastic pieces
Uh-huh.
of Captain Jack Sparrow from
Right.
from a Pirates of the Caribbean tie-in, whatever,
Mhm.
what becomes valuable? The one that is wrong.
Right.
The
That's
one
wrong.
that is
Remember last week we
made-
talked about,
made incorrect. It has
Yeah.
a flaw. It's been colored the wrong way. His
Yeah.
hand is on
or
backwards.
2 weeks ago.
It only happens once every 1,000 pieces or so. The value goes up because it's different from all the others
Right.
that anybody can just go pick up.
Exactly. Like during our music one, we talked about how a misprint can be rare.
Yes.
If something printed on the both sides or whatever. Same with toys.
Yeah.
If you have a bunch of Spider-Mans and one of them is an off color because for some reason they
Yeah.
were running out of color,
Right.
that's going to be worth more. Now, when I say off color, I don't mean that it was played with and washed and faded.
Right. When it was produced by the company, somebody put the red paint into the blue slot.
And it made it a
yellow slot.
purplish
Right.
red. So that would make it more expensive and more sought after. But that is based off from mass marketing.
Mhm.
That wouldn't happen prior to mass marketing because there were actual people doing it.
Right.
And that's why vintage and antique and tend to be a little bit more expensive
Mhm.
than everyday stuff. Because
Yeah.
if they repopped out this game right here, you could go to any toy store and buy it. Although lately repopped albums are more expensive than, and you buy it. You may be able to get it for $19 or $20.
Yeah.
Whereas a perfect sealed Charlie's Angels game from the 1977, it may run you $60, $70.
Right. Right.
Because it's original and it's got all the original pieces in it. So just because it's old doesn't always make it expensive either.
Correct.
So let's talk about some of the downsides. Okay, so some of the downsides of mass marketing is how it affects the geographical areas.
Yeah.
So Walmart is considered one of the largest department stores or stores in the chain stores there is. And Walmart, all of us know, they go into these little towns and they become the massive go-to place, and all the employees work from the town and everything, and then they pull out.
Right. Depending on what your business is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when I talk about mass marketing changes your geographical areas. It could take a booming town and destroy it.
Mhm.
It could take a small town that has nobody in it and turn it into a bigger town,
Right.
which is progress, but still for some it may not be.
Yeah.
Number two is there's a misconception when it comes to mass marketing. Everybody thinks, oh, you know what? It's all made in China, so it's all cheap, it's all this, it's all that. As a business owner, I'm going to tell you right now, that's not always the case. Because, yeah, they may be cheap, and it may be, 30 cents for me to buy, but I have to buy 1,000 of those to get them for that.
Right.
So
Right.
30 times 1,000, it adds up.
Yeah.
Now, I can only sell it to you for maybe $1.50. So by the time I've spent however much, $3,000 or 30,000, $3,000 on this product, and it takes me 10 years to sell all 1,000 pieces,
You've got.
I've lost money.
Yeah.
So it becomes expensive, and mass marketing is chipping away quickly at the small business.
Yes.
Because small businesses like us and like several, and when I say small business, I mean chains of 10
Right.
and lower.
Right.
A million and
small
less.
to micro business.
Small to micro business. They cannot buy that quantity.
Right.
Because if they buy that quantity, they're going to be sitting on product, and sitting on product costs money.
Yes. Yes. Which also devalues the product.
If we lower the price on the mass marketing, then we lose money even that way.
Yes.
So it's a no-win situation when it comes to small businesses. So that's what drove mass marketing in the 80s, drove the big box store, and started removing the small mom and pop stores.
Yes.
Okay, my sister's adopted parents, they owned a grocery store.
Yeah.
That slowly started to have to, because of mass marketing.
Yeah.
Vintage and antique stores like this, I think it's all on how you do business and stuff, but so explaining how we do this, I think, is integral to having customers come back. It's the understanding.
Yeah.
It's all about education.
Yeah.
So another thing is mass marketing. When mass marketing is done, when they're planning for a toy, like let's say this. You got to tell about this. That's
the
right.
Smurfs. Yeah.
Yes. So let's just say this right here, Disney, because Disney loves mass marketing, right? So Disney, what was I talking about? May not take into consideration. Okay, so mass marketing is done prior, right? So if they're going to make this and decide, okay, we're going to do a Cinderella movie, so we're going to do all these Cinderella things, and we're going to mass market it out.
Right.
They're talking about that a year or so before they mass market it out.
Right.
So by the time they mass market it out, our marketing could have changed. They take none of that into consideration.
Right.
Okay, because it's done so far in advance.
Yeah.
The second thing is about close a small business. One of the main things, and one of the things that bother me, is the fact of the waste.
Yeah.
Mass marketing costs.
Yes.
Okay, so 90% of what is made for mass marketing is made in plastics.
Right.
Plastics are non-biodegradable. Plastics are what are floating in our oceans, are what's buried in our earth, are what's eating up our sea life. It's what's doing all of that. So the more the mass marketing happens, the more waste we get.
Right.
Now, we need mass marketing in a way.
Yeah.
We do. So it's how to come to heads on how to take care of the amount of waste. Now, we all go to the store, we buy little gift things that we hand out at Halloween, or we hand out, here and there, and it ends up on the ground, it ends up in the trash, it ends up in stuff. So mass marketing is horrendous when it comes to waste. And one of the things that I read is going forward, mass marketing is going to be changing. I don't know how, but everything's going to be changing. But enough of that. That's all craziness, right? So let's talk about Smurfs.
So the Smurfs, everybody remembers.
The
And
Smurfs.
If you're an 80s child,
You
who's
remember
coming
the
up your
Smurfs?
age in the 80s and the 90s, you
Yep.
remember the Smurfs as being a very, very 80s type of phenomenon.
Yep.
I was shocked to discover during some research that the Smurfs actually predate all of that. Started in Belgium in around 1958 by the cartoonist Peyo, who apparently achieved some success, got some groundwork with that. They did an animated film for the Smurfs as early as 1965. And it was a big enough success that it carried some international appeal. Now, we didn't get into it until around 83 or so, when an animated series hit the airwaves. I think NBC was probably the one. It's probably this same one we're familiar with. it blew up here. We all think about the Smurfs, the collectible PVC's characters, the everything that was a tie-in, everything in pencils to school backpacks to all the things you can think about. And it just goes to show it's an interesting concept that you could have something that was beloved and was a product way back in the time of, like, even the Daniel Boone and the
I
David
didn't even
Crockett
know that
stuff.
was the case.
I didn't know that was the case either. And to have that sort of roll forward, even to the point where they're making the big major CGI feature films, and have been for a couple of years now.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones are new.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which actually started as a parody of the X-Men comic. It was an underground comic by a couple of guys.
That I did not know.
Because the X-Men always had mutants and ninjas floating around. The parody got picked up. They did a cartoon series with it. The guys sold the rights to it, and off we go.
Another good one to talk about is wrestling. WWE, WWF.
Right.
I mean, this is something that's it's a sports show.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess, in a way, sports show, entertainment.
Yeah.
So WWE started out as that. I mean, it's almost everything. Now at the point where we're in the thousands, and most toys that we see today are made for movies.
Right, or have a tie into media in some way or another.
And that's why you don't see baby dolls or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anchorman.
Yeah.
These are shot glasses from the movie.
Well, and again,
Anchorman.
I think that also speaks to like the culture of collecting, which is, with a vintage shop, it's difficult to complain about that type of thing because you do want to be able to help collectors finish their collection.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea being that it's already set in stone by the time this new media comes out or this new project comes out, that there's going to be 20 new things. If you want to be considered a real collector, you're going to have to get every single piece of that and have it in mint condition.
Another good one is the Universal Monsters.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't have any to show you. I wish I did.
Because they go like that.
Like that. Universal Monsters is huge, but they didn't start really making the Universal Monsters. Well, they made them in the 60s, the models.
Yeah.
So that is one of the big ones because you could put them together and paint them and everything. So that is another one like Davy Crockett where the Universal Monster Aurora models, because models date back way before that.
Mm-hmm.
And so creating the Aurora models or the Universal Monsters was ingenious for them.
Yeah.
Another one is Planet of the Apes.
Yep.
And I don't know if you can see it, but we do have the trash can up there as well. Oh, no, you can't. We have the trash can as well. But Planet of the Apes, that was also a TV show?
Started off as a novel.
As a novel.
A French novel. As
a French novel.
Then apparently got optioned out. They did the first film, which was wildly successful, and then tied into a number of different merchandising aspects, as well as all the sequels that then followed.
And you got to, and when I say that it was made off the TV thing, there was a novel, and some of these may have had novels to begin with, but if you look at the characters, are they based off from?
Yeah, they're based off of what's
the
going
TV
on in terms of shows.
Or the movie, because if this was based off the book, there would be probably no pictures on the front.
Right.
Or it would just be somebody's made up version of it.
It would be a different artist's interpretation of
Right.
what those characters
would look like.
Yeah.
And we've all seen that, where
Yes.
you see the original, like Winnie the Pooh, you see the original, then you see Disney's version of it, and so forth.
Well,
and
I think that's a genius. That's a good point as far as some of the classic stuff, things that we consider sort of timeless, at least in our own culture. There's always another generation going to reinterpret it.
Yeah.
There's going to be a different Alice in Wonderland. We've seen a couple of Willy Wonkas at this point. That type of thing is it's inspiring and it's interesting. That you can
they did a 1974 show. There was a movie around that same time as well, right?
Yeah.
If not before.
Yeah.
So a lot of these are based off, like, this is, I think, based off the 74 series. It's based off the 74 series. Yeah. Whereas you can find some stuff that might be based off the movie, but it might be a little bit harder to find.
Yes.
So, I was going to say something else too. Oh, and then the Felix the Cat up there, a lot. And what's shocking me is more and more kids know Felix the Cat. Yeah. And they haven't done a movie on Felix the Cat in forever. Yeah. But Felix the Cat, that's another after the fact. So remember, anything like I Love Lucy, Laurel and Hardy, any of the big shows from
Betty Boop stuff.
Betty Boop stuff. Oh, that's great example, Betty Boop stuff. Now, whereas you could have, like, we said you could find some little bits here and there prior. The mass market of those and a lot of those designs and a lot of those things that you see today all came out in the late 80s and early 90s. There was no marketing of that aspect.
Yeah. Well,
prior.
as we said, is like, and as soon as a generation hits a certain
Mhm.
age, we start to feel nostalgia for something that was at the time or something that was considered a classic. They're all over it,
Right.
jumping on it. Let's get a new pop out.
Mhm.
The I Love Lucy Monopoly is a good example. Several of the, what magnets for I Love
Yeah.
Lucy, postcards, that type of thing.
Yeah.
None of that stuff was out while the show was on the air or
No.
high in popularity.
Mm-mm.
In fact, it took decades for that stuff to come back around because you're revisiting what you
Mhm.
consider to be a certain age. The nostalgia pulls it in. We're probably going to see, if we're around long enough, a lot of the early 21st century stuff is going to come back in terms of they'll reinvent that for nostalgia. They're going to reinvent this character, pull some stuff in.
So when we talk about the past and the future, they collide when it comes to entertainment. They collide in all ways, but when it comes to entertainment and such, you'll have your original look and then you'll have your newer look, and the original looks will always be more collectible.
Yes.
They'll always be more collectible
because it's closer to the root material.
Exactly. The first line of McDonald's toys are worth a fortune. The first line. But also remember that if you look here, you've got pretty much just 1, 2, 3 that are more for girls, whereas the rest would be more for boys of the time period. That's what I'm referring to at the time period. Today, that's different, but at the time period, because back in the day, girls took care of their toys. They did. Girls took care of their toys. Boys did not. So that makes boys' toys worth more than girl toys. And when I say girl toys, I mean dolls. I mean stuff like that versus action figures or more boy-driven toys.
Stuff that when it was produced at the time,
it was produced
marketed
for
a specific gender identity.
Whereas today we all play with everything, which is the way it should be and should have been, but it's not the way that it was. And so therefore, you take a look at it, and when we look for toys and we look for things, we look more so for boys' toys, because Barbie would be probably one of the few girl toys we look for. When I say Barbie, I mean pre-1980 Barbies. Not 1980 and newer, because we have all of those.
As we were talking about mass producing.
Mass producing. Mattel mass produces Barbie like there's no tomorrow. And then you have the flip. Where they make movies based on toys. I.e. G.I. Joe. I.e. Barbie. They just made the major motion picture Barbie. Based off the doll.
Toy Story is probably one of the most successful in terms of the merchandising, because not only were they able to use some characters and creations of their own, hey Rex, but to tie in classic stuff like Mr. Potato Head or the Slinky Dog, any of that stuff.
Tying in the toys. Now, something I heard today on the way here on the radio, actually, and is 2024 is the year of Barney. Okay, so everybody remembers the 1990s Barneys, right? The purple dinosaur.
Purple singing dinosaur.
Okay, so I heard that 2024 is going to be the year that Barney comes back.
Real big.
The animated version of Barney, not the big stuffed animal again. That was just frightening. And so
it's no Teletubbies.
It was nuts. But so what's going to happen? Do you think Barney stuff is going to start to blow up? And yes, I mean blow up for adults, because those of you who remember watching Barney in the 90s, because it was a big, huge show for kids, are now old enough to buy back the original Barney. And trust me, humans are all the same when it comes to that. We all live based on our nostalgia. So therefore, if we couldn't afford the Barney, we'd come back and get it.
Stuff cycles through just based on how
I hated Barney
buy
too.
back your childhood.
Actually, he was freaky.
There's not an exciting character.
Barney is not going to be an actual person.
No,
it's going to be animation. It's going to be animation. So we've given you guys a lot of information when it comes to this type of stuff. So what I guess the point of my aspect of this is always buy vintage when you can. There are two sides to every coin. So when it comes to mass merchandising, there are benefits to it, but there are also downfalls, and both are just as extreme.
Right.
So we all have to be careful in how we treat our stuff.
Yes.
Because Steve always made this comment that said, we are not owners of product, we are caretakers of product, because product will outlive us.
Yes. A lot of this stuff is going to be around long after we're gone if it's cared
Yep.
for and it's kept in a safe
So when you are deciding what to buy,
Yeah.
when you are deciding, on that toy that you want to give somebody, oh, actually, you had a good point here too. Because he said that it's as far as it goes up to
Oh, yeah.
the wrapping paper
Stickers,
as well.
wrapping paper,
Stickers, wrapping
pencils.
papers. So when you buy, if you're buying for somebody who collects, think about buying them the original first. Come to stores like ours
Mhm.
before you hit the mass market.
Right.
If you're in an area that does not have stores like ours, then go to the store and buy it.
Yeah.
I do buy stuff online. I'm not against that. However, I do believe that to get the correct thing and it quick enough and not have to pay stupid shipping fees,
Yeah.
please come in and shop. Come into your local stores and shop. Go to all towns that I know of, or at least towns close enough that are bigger, will have a vintage or an antique store in it, or a toy store that carries both.
Yeah.
So check it out, because sometimes when you're buying a gift for somebody, like let's say you're buying a Disney item for somebody, maybe you get them something old and something new.
Yeah. Well, and the small businesses are the ones that are going to be able to provide you with a wider breadth of inventory.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is an independent, they're able to collect and have vintage toys or vintage books, vintage
Yeah.
movies, vinyl, whatever it may be, while also being able to single-handedly bring in other new
Yeah.
stuff as well. The idea being that there's that balance to it, I think, as opposed to a lot of the big chain stores or the big box stores,
Mm-hmm.
where what you're getting is what the company paid another company to send in bulk to
Right.
sell for that year because it's what it's planned for. A lot of it, when it's gone, and stuff that is farther back or has echoes of it, there's no mechanism for them to get a hold of that stuff
No.
to bring it to you.
So, so that's what I was thinking. I mean, because I was before I became involved in vintage and antique, it was all new stuff for me.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was not educated on the aspect of the amount of trash that provides
Yeah.
and the fact that there are better quality things
Yeah.
if you buy older.
Well, I think we all fall into that trap of, I want it new, I want it shiny, I don't want anybody
Mhm.
else to have touched it. It should be mine to open and experience and enjoy. And while I think that's laudable to a certain degree, everybody
Keep it to your underwear.
Well, there's certain things I think you could still experience that same joy
Absolutely.
of having and owning and being to it. I think the tagline in vintage a lot of time is, it's new to you.
It's new to you, absolutely. And walking into vintage and antique stores does not mean you're going to get something that's been played with.
Right.
Because I'm sitting here holding a
75, 76,
75?
74.
74.
1974
A 1974 original Planet of the Apes coloring book. And guess what? It's never been colored in.
Yeah.
It's like brand new. So you'd be surprised what you can find in a vintage and antique store. Not everybody loved what they received, so they put it in a box.
Yeah.
And that is the best when we come across that.
Yeah.
So anyways, come into vintage and antique stores and shop. There's good to each. There's good and bad to everything.
Yeah.
Mass marketing's not. I'm not bashing it, but I am telling you that try your vintage store first, then go to your big box.
Mhm.
Try your small business first. We care, and we show the care.
Right.
Because I don't want to say that the employees at big box don't care, because
No.
some of them do.
Yeah.
But they are so busy and so stressed out
Yeah.
that they don't show it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can be, but
Well, and I think sometimes too, you'll also discover that just because you bought something expensive and new somewhere doesn't mean that once you've unwrapped it or you've taken the shine has come off of it, that is going to keep the value that you paid
oh
for it.
no, that
a
is
large
true.
part of the time the value is going to drop as soon as you've got a hold of it, or it shouldn't have been that expensive to begin with.
Right.
The
And
value
it
is
definitely
gonna
will
come-
drop as soon as you open it.
Yeah, the value is just going to come from the demand.
Keep your boxes, people.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Again, follow us on, go to our TikTok. I'm so close. Come on, people. I need a few more likes and we can go live on TikTok.
Just make it
I know, it's crazy. And we missed you, Jasmine. We'll see her next week when we talk about what are we talking about? We're talking about how do I word that? That's
Well, Black History Month is
well,
gonna be our
Black
time
History
for that.
Month, and then we're talking about the contributions that Black Americans made to everyday items like peanut butter and like
Traffic light.
He just told me that, and I didn't know. I'm gonna have to look that up and talk about it.
Yeah.
And Betty Boop and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So we're
like
gonna
that.
learn. I'm gonna learn a lot.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be fun and exciting. So catch us next week, and you guys have a good night. Thank you.
Happy
Bye, you
Valentine's Day.
guys. How do you stop that? This one. Come on. There we go.
Turn it off.